Hi, everyone. This is Amy from the Helms Academy, and today we're going to be talking about some time-saving tips for your GED and HiSET tests. So my first tip for you today is to make sure you're practicing with a timer. When you take those practice tests and are working on questions, it's good to get an idea of how long it takes you to work through those questions so that you can go in prepared for what you'll need to do to perform on the actual test. And with that, I'd encourage you on the test to keep an eye on the clock. Now, a lot of people feel a little anxious when they're looking at the time passing by. And so this is where 1 and 2 really go together. When you're practicing with that timer, you get used to the rhythms of how time moves when you're doing this test, and it reduces some of the stress during the test. But during the test, you need to keep an eye on that clock because you need to make sure that you're not using too much time. And one great way to do that is to do the math ahead of time. You can look up how many questions are on this section of the test and how much time will you have. And that will help you to figure out how much time you should be spending per question about. Now, as always, there will be some questions that take a bit longer and some questions that don't take as much time. But you want to make sure that you're not spending way too much time on any one question, and especially too early on in the test. Now, one thing I want to really reinforce here is that you should not leave anything blank on this test. If something is blank, it is wrong. So what I'd encourage you to do is if you're feeling like you're spending too much time on a question or like you will need to spend a lot of time on that question, fill in an answer for now, make a note for yourself, and come back. You can always spend more time on it at the end, but it will be better for you to put your best effort into the majority of the test than for you to spend too much time on one question and then have to rush through other things later. Worst case scenario, you don't get time to come back at the end. At least you filled something in, even if it was just a random guess. When you're going for a test like this, I often encourage students to come prepared with a letter that you want to fill in. Maybe all the ones that you're not sure about, you just pick C. That's fine. You'll have a 25% chance of getting it right, but that's way better than a 0% chance if you don't fill it in. And again, when you are short on time, a guess is better than blank. So maybe you did get a little off at the beginning and you spent too much time on those earlier questions, and now you only have a few minutes to finish some last questions. In that situation, you want to make sure that you fill in the answers, even if you're not sure. Don't spend a lot of time trying to make your guess, but make sure above all that you get things filled in. And if you have a little bit of extra time, a minute or two at the end to review some of those questions, you can do that. But again, always better to fill it in than to leave it blank. Now, don't forget to use your resources on the test because this is a huge time saver. On the HiSET, you'll find a formula sheet like you see on the left side of your screen, and on the GED, you'll see the formula sheet like you see on the right side of your screen. And for both tests, you'll use the same calculator. Now, the calculator is called the TI-30XS, and you can find trials of this online as well as numerous other YouTube videos that explain how to use this calculator. The GED has also made a special sheet online that you can find that'll show you some of the key functions of the calculator to help you on the test. Now, these resources can be really helpful on the test, but if you have never looked at them before, it will take more time to read through them than will really be helpful to you. So make sure if you're preparing for the GED or HiSET now, that you take some time to look over these formula sheets for whatever tests you are going for, and to make sure that you're familiar with that material and know how to use it so that way it can be a resource to you rather than a hindrance on the test. And my 7th piece of advice is just to read the question first. So for some people, this can be really helpful, especially if you're working with a big text. So let's say you're working on the reading test and there's a full page reading text before you get to the questions. I often recommend to students to go ahead and read those questions first so that way you have an idea of what you're looking for in the text. And that may help you to move a little bit more quickly through the material. And lastly, instead of focusing on what you don't know, remember how much you do know. You're of course going to see some questions that challenge you and push you, maybe questions where you feel inferior, like you haven't prepared enough. But I want you to remember that you've put time into preparing for this. Just by watching this video shows that you're committed to taking this test and to preparing well for it. So make sure that when you feel that you are not prepared for this test, or you're feeling a little intimidated by the material, that you remember that you've prepared for this and to take it one question at a time. Thank you so much for watching, and good luck on your tests. You can check out the Helms Academy on our YouTube channel by subscribing, on Instagram and on Facebook, and at helmsacademy.org.